Welcome back to Builders of the Broken Bazaar. I'm your host again, Dr. Tabish Zaman. Today is very, very special. I want to take you to my own city, the city where I live, a place a lot of people know for its landmark. But those who actually understand this, they know Hull is defined by people who dare to shape the world far beyond it. This is the city of William Wilberforce, whose fight against the slave trade redefined global morality. This is the city of Amy Johnson, who flew solo across oceans long before it was imaginable. Hull's history isn't just about place. It's about persistence, reinvention, and the kind of everyday entrepreneurship, a refusal, I would say, to accept the limits placed on us. But pride and history doesn't erase the pressure this city has lived or has been living with today. Across Hull, the inequalities are unmistakable. In some of the neighborhoods, life expectancy is 10 to 12 years lower than the national average. If you look at some of the numbers, Hull sits in the bottom 5% of the UK for physical activity and overall health outcomes. Again, nearly 34% of the children grow up in poverty, one of the highest rates in England. And the council, they face 35 to 40 million funding gaps, forcing cuts, precisely the services communities rely on. Now, these statistics, if you look at it, they don't diminish Hull. They reveal the scale of what this city carries and the scale of what it continues to overcome. Because in Hull, something extraordinary is happening, especially when formal system is falling short. And I want to mention sports. Sports has become a sort of social infrastructure, a space where belonging is created, where identity is protected, and where well-being, community, and dignity is actively built. I'm talking about Hull KR Foundation, an institution in a city forever marked by Clive Sullivan, the first black captain of any British national sporting side. A man whose courage, talent, and dignity still echoes through every generation of rugby league in the region. His life reminded us that rugby league is never just about result. It's about raising people up, creating belonging, and leading with heart. In East Hull, Hull KR Foundation has grown into a civic engine, delivering education, youth employment, mental health programs, and you name it, lifelong well-being. So this is not just a charity. This is a transformation, what I call a civic repair. This is Hull continuing its legacy of building hope in the middle of hardship. And at the heart of it, you have a leader who recognizes a simple truth, that in Hull, rugby league is not just a game. It's a community, identity, and care. A leader at one of country's most quietly transformative institutions, not just a CEO in sport, but a builder of the future. Paul Hamnett, CEO of Hull KR Foundation. Welcome to Builders of the Broken Bazaar. And Vikki, along with that, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. Thank you for that amazing introduction and a great synopsis of Hull. And, the city that it is and the challenges it faces every day.
Thank you, Paul. We would unpack so many of that as we go about. But before we talk about the foundation, I want to talk about you, and I want to talk about Vikki as well. So if you could give us a bit of what you do. Again, I'm aware you do a bit of coaching, community leadership, charity governance.
Yeah, so my heart is in charity. I've very much from a young age always connected with that giving, that serving mindset. So I've worked in the charity sector for nearly 20 years, mainly through sport, so using sport as the vehicle. Because I'm a sportsman at heart, and I think when we look at my trade, I am a sports coach. So again, that opportunity to help people develop, and then as you do, you develop as an individual, and now I take that into professional coaching as well. So again, helping potentially leaders of the future, obviously the team that we lead here. So yeah, I just have this kinship with how can we provide opportunities for people to aspire to. So it's never about doing it for. It's about how do we enable people to do that. So yeah, my life has felt like you're serving people, which for me always gives me a great sense of satisfaction, and it gives you the opportunity to meet people and learn and get that wealth and that breadth of understanding about who people are and what they're trying to achieve. So yeah, working here, I get to combine my two passions. I'm a rugby league fan, not a Hull KR fan. I'm actually a Wigan Warriors fan. So there's plenty of banter in the office, as you can imagine. And then my love of helping people and supporting them. So, is it a job? No, not really. It's my passion. So it's then very, very natural for me to get involved, want to help and find solutions. So yeah, that's where I find myself today, and absolutely loving it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Paul. Now, if you go back to Vikki, I know I've met Vikki in person, and I've seen the way she has been talking about some of the programs, which you run at community level. Vikki, tell us about you. What's got you into this, and what is it that you enjoy being part of this process?
For me, I've been with the foundation now just short of 3 years, and previous to that was working welfare to work, so helping people get jobs. And I love the fact that now I'm at the foundation, I get to do that, but I've also branched out into so many other things apart from just being a work coach. I get to see it at ground level, and I get to meet so many diverse different people in different communities, and there's the sort of things that I've not experienced before, and I sort of come to the foundation and I was like, this is home, this is where I am, and this is where I want to be forever. So for me, it enabled me to get my passion for helping people, but also I'm passionate about the role that I do in the fact that I can reach it to so many more different people other than the people that I was caseloaded to do. I can task myself and go and say, I want to go and work with this cohort of people. So I'll go out and do it. I've got no sort of restrictions in terms of who and where, why I want to do it.
Yeah, fair enough. I can see this is really, really special, talking about an institution through sports doing what it does. But we can all agree among us that Hull is a city which has pride, of course, which has the community spirit, which we can see, but also some of the UK's toughest socioeconomic indicators. So how do these local realities shape the work of foundation, which you both are part of?
Well, as a charity, we are driven by the need of the community. So there is absolutely no point us just doing what we feel like doing. If we've got a passion for something, it's meaningless. So we have to be driven by their need. And the identity of Hull KR as a rugby league club is so close to so many people's hearts for numerous reasons. It was very much, back when it first formed, even up into the 70s and the 80s, it was a place where local people played rugby. So, you have conversations that my uncle, my cousin, my granddad played for Hull KR, and they want to be connected. So it's a really special tool that we get to use where people go, amazing, Hull KR are here, but it's the team we have that can connect with people that makes it the special organisation that it is, because people buy into people, and we employ a lot of local people as well. So they understand the challenges. Some of them live in the local areas. So again, they've grown up and seen the changes that the community's gone through. So that really helps us focus the work that we do. So we have to be driven by what the community needs. And yes, unfortunately, in a lot of sectors, the situation's not getting better. but we are one piece of that puzzle to create that impact. We are a top of the rugby league playing tree at the moment, but we're just one part of a solution that the city needs to try and provide. But we know the importance of us being part of that puzzle, because people will listen to our message, even if it is the same or similar message from other organisations, because trust is really important. So one of the things we do is you talk to the human first. You talk and you understand. That's what makes it special, because they then don't feel like a transaction. They feel like a human being, which that's what most of us all want. When we go somewhere, when we're connecting with something, we want to be seen as the person we are. And our team does that brilliantly.
I think you articulated that human values so clearly in terms of what you do. Now, talking specifically in terms of the gaps, again, you've been with Hull KR for some time now as well. So what sort of gaps specifically are we looking at, which didn't exist maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, or even 5 years ago for that matter, which Hull KR is actively looking to fill in terms of the programs?
Unfortunately, the main area we work in East Hull, and also we branch out, do quite a bit of work North Hull, is those services have not met the needs for probably longer than 15 years. And so the areas that we kind of specialize in, for want of a better phrase, is the world of employment. So Vikki's world. Those people that potentially generationally have, people have been unemployed, and whether they've used the welfare state, or even potentially, you've got people whose granddads, uncles, fathers have been in prison. So unemployment seems to be the norm for some people. So again, we're here to get, how do we connect people to break that generational unemployment? To raise that aspiration. So there are huge gaps in that support for unemployment, and how do you break down the reason why they don't have a job? And it's not necessarily about don't want a job, it's about why they don't have a job. And so that's a big area for us, which then does lead to inequalities in health, inequalities in housing. So there are so many things that are interlinked. One of the things that we do really well is how do we actually get to the root cause of the problem. So, I don't work because. So then we understand the reason behind that. So employability is a big one. Growing skills is also within there as well. But we also then link health and well-being. Yeah. So again, how can we help improve people's health and well-being, which might link to improving their confidence, their self-esteem, because actually they live where they live and they're proud of that. They don't shy away from the fact that they've generationally lived in East Hull and love it. They wouldn't want to live anywhere else. So that isn't an issue. And I don't understand why people then see that East Hull is like a bad place to live. It's not. People love it. But it's understanding what can help them be more mobile. And sometimes that is simply, I need to find a social network, and support with my children. I need some support with my health. So understanding that means that's then why we have the pillars we have. So employability, health and well-being, community, and then it kind of rugby league and sport. It means we can be flexible. So, and that's why we have to be as a charity responding to that need, because Vikki could have two people that live on the same street but are facing two different reasons for their inequality. And so it's really important that it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's understand the human and then put them on the right path to then get to the same outcome, which is we want to have some sustainable employment, but there's two people that are going to get there at a very different route.
I mean, the fact that as a sporting institution, you identify that and you look at it through that lens, like I said at the start of it, it makes it very, very special. Now, when I look at the programs you have, when I look at your portfolio in terms of what you do, it just amazes me, which is why, I insisted on making sure I have this discussion with you. But then you work extensively in primary and secondary schools across the city as well, isn't it, if I'm correct?
Yes.
Please, for the love of the audience, in terms of trying to understand, take us through one of your education programs and how they're addressing the need which you talk about so eloquently.
Yeah, and this is definitely an area that's evolved in my time working in sporting charities. So they're two very different settings. So in our primary offer, we will provide PE lessons. So again, how are we helping schools reach the number of hours that they're required to do, from a statutory point of view? But we'll also work with teachers. How do we grow their confidence so that sport and physical activity is seen as a positive vehicle, but also a positive vehicle for numerous things, and how you can blend other subjects into that world. So we have an offer that goes out to schools, and they tell us what challenges they are facing. So again, this isn't just about us going, we can deliver some great sports sessions, some great PE lessons. Actually, what are the challenges you're facing? And whether that is around behavior, it's around attendance, it could be to do with obesity, we then respond with the right program. So we could be doing things around how do we make attending school, more attractive. Oh, Hull KR are coming in. That's a big selling point. Kids support Hull KR. How do we make something more exciting? Well, if you have specialists delivering your PE lesson, it's naturally going to be different because it's their passion, and that isn't against any teacher at all, but it's confidence to deliver a high quality lesson if you don't feel like you've been trained. So how can we improve the environment and contribute to a primary school that are very much now dealing with a lot of different things than when we were at primary school? And that the expectation of primary schools has gone from that vehicle of education to now actually how do you deal with every single problem that a family potentially has with less real terms money and investment. So we as a charity are reasonable, in terms of we've still got to pay our own bills, but it's getting the good value for money and the range of things that are going on. But it's quite scary in terms of what schools bring to us to say we would like some support with this that's going on with our community, because again, we've got schools in quite close proximity, but they'll all be dealing with different challenges as the makeup of their school population changes with the ever changing population of the city as well. Secondary schools, we all see the challenges that's going on with young people at the moment. When you're looking at mental health challenges, you're looking at things around, misogyny, you're looking at things that to do with obviously the migration subject. That is a melting pot of things that teachers and secondary schools might not necessarily feel prepared to deliver. Because you're dealing with sometimes 1,200, 1,500 students in a very small space. So they connect with us to then think about how can we do some mentoring? How can we support young people in the challenges they're facing? Again, not a one size fits all, because we don't know who we're going to be asked to work with, but it will vary from that, mental health crisis that's going on. And again, sometimes it's linked with confidence. Yes, there might be people there that are potentially being bullied or at risk of. There are people at risk of exploitation. But if we don't tackle it when they're younger people, it obviously will present challenges as they get older. And some of the people that Vikki sees through her program, which is that kind of 16 plus, you are getting people that have been exploited. There are people that have developed, their mental health is poor because of stuff that happened in an academic environment. And that's not because schools don't care. That's just the challenges that it's facing. So unfortunately, what we see is the very start of those challenges. But how do we slow that down, and how do we put a stop to it? Because I think the scariest thing is that there are children as young as 7 or 8 that are already identified to the police. They're already known. They've had X number of contacts with the police before the age of 10, when they can actually be obviously criminally responsible. So the challenge is only getting tougher because more children are coming into those arenas, like the police, like social services, earlier and earlier. And so therefore the scale of the challenge is only ever going to increase. But all we ever hear nationally is that money to do it. There's no money to support. There isn't anybody thinking differently. So that's where we come in as a charity, to try and think a bit differently to engage.
Thank you for shedding the light on these realities, which, of course, you and your colleagues face in, day out. Now, the interesting part here is a lot of the institutions, again, both local and national level, would be interested in the outcomes, again, what you achieve at the end of these programs. But for me, what I look at it is what mechanisms you have in place to actually identify, in a sense, that before we even go or showcase what the output is or what the outcome is, having that vision, having that understanding of where this problem is coming from, and again, having your colleagues look at it. So where does it come from in terms of Healthcare Foundation? How do you do this? Like, do you have a process? Do you have a system in place, or has it always been like this at Healthcare Foundation?
We connect with organisations that a family, an individual might have to connect with. And that might be through the local authority, it could be through the job centre, it could be through the NHS. And then they will connect them with us, is one route. So again, when we're looking at that community support. But likewise, we advertise our services. We promote that you can pop down and essentially come and talk to somebody. So Vikki and her team, have that opportunity where people reach out and they just have a chat with them. And some people think it's this, magic pill or magic process. Actually, sometimes the best form of understanding is it's over a cup of tea. It's over a cup of coffee, just to kind of go, how are you doing? And so for us, it's about being an open and inclusive organisation. But what we're really clear on, and this is something that we've been doing over the past couple of years, is understanding our place in the process. So what we can't be is all things to all people, because there are other absolutely amazing voluntary and community organisations in the city that are much better placed to tackle somebody's potential issue. So again, we then connect, because we become a trusted organisation to that person. We connect them with another organisation, and they literally could be over the road from us, round the corner, because what we should be doing is finding the right solution for an individual. And some of the time that's us, but other times it's not. And that's how we have to be really honest with ourselves, because where we have to be careful as an organisation is we are one of the biggest brands in the city. And there's the risk there that you think you can do everything and you end up doing nothing, because you don't know what your niche world is. We are an amazing delivery organisation. We are amazing at connecting with people, but we're not always the experts. And that's what we have to identify. So it's a skill of an organisation to kind of go, we can only take somebody so far. We are only part of their journey. But what we do, and I know Vikki does this really well, and Megan, who works with her, is that when they do leave our journey, they leave the door open to say, if you're struggling, give us a call. So we've always got somebody that has got their back even in the time of crisis, even in a time of, they might have lost a job, they might have had something happen. There is essentially a friendly face that will, that cup of tea. And when we look at some of our older people work, a lot of our work grows because it started with a social interaction and the confidence that people can build their own network to help them thrive. Because if they become too reliant on us, and then for whatever reason we don't ever exist, who do they then connect with? So it's really important to us where, yes, on the rugby field, you've kind of got to be a bit arrogant, a little bit ego because you want to be the best. We become the best in a different way. We become the best because we're getting the right outcomes for others, not ourselves as an organization. So therefore, hence at the start, I always use the word serve, because actually we're serving those individuals to help them find their next opportunity or their next connection. And we do get outcomes. We absolutely do. But it would be really interesting to measure how many outcomes we help people achieve by referring them. Because actually we don't always know what that outcome may end up being because they've moved on to the next organization, and we might find out anecdotally. But for us, that's not what it's about. For us, it's about they've got the right thing. We wish them, we wish them well, and then we're here if they need us.
Again, this is such a refreshing approach to how you look at a human development. And again, you've been very humble in saying there are certain sort of areas where you can't go in or you can't work in because obviously you know your limitations, you understand who you are, where you can deliver. But that sort of approach, I can clearly see it runs through some of the things you spoke about: education, you spoke about health and mental well-being. Disability is again an important element of what you do. Disability and social inclusion. You run disability session. There are camps out there, social clubs, community days. So for foundation, again, if you look within the corporate world, how disability, equality, and all these words have been romanticized as we say, or as we look at it, which is why we've not been able to achieve the outcome or the impact as we see. But what does it mean for your foundation when we talk about inclusion? How do you see it? I'd love to know your take on what you see or how you understand, how your team understands inclusion.
Yes, it's always a really interesting question, because for us, we just get on with it in terms of who turns up at our door. And what's really important to us as a team is how do you develop and how do you live in a world where you are not judgmental on any individual, in the world. And that old saying, don't judge somebody until you've walked a mile in their shoes, sort of thing. For me, it's really important, especially because we employ young people, that it's potentially their first rung on the career ladder. When you're hit left, right, and center with news, social media about, negative things about certain communities, it's about trying to develop an understanding and an education. So if an individual turns up to us, maybe in a wheelchair, maybe have recently, come over as a migrant into a new world. For us, it's about understanding them and their journey. And yes, every walk of life has its minority that suddenly then actually, no, that means that all those people are that individual. It's trying to help people see through the noise that actually this community or that group of people are not stereotyped by a media, by even sometimes a community. Because for me, it's about a lack of understanding. So again, it links back to that. What are you basing your opinion on? Is this based on somebody else's opinion or your interaction with an individual that you've had the pleasure of chatting to? But also being realistic that you're not going to agree with everybody. You can't agree with everybody's opinion. You're not there to agree with everybody's opinion. But what I believe you should be doing is educating yourself on why somebody potentially thinks like that. Where have they come from? Why do they find themselves in this situation? To then form an opinion to potentially get to an outcome. So it's really cliche to say, isn't it, that we accept everybody. We'll take it. We'll take anybody that comes to our door, but we have to make assessments because we only have so much funding that we can actually help people with. But the first thing is always going to be just understand who they are. So we know Hull, is having an increase in population. We know that people are facing more mental health challenges. So again, when you're looking at disability, or you're looking at how do you support people because they've been diagnosed with conditions, but we've got to learn, we've got to understand, but equally we've got to challenge. And we've got to have that healthy kind of understanding of what we can and can't do as an organisation. And we've been having conversations recently about how can we expand our provision? What are the things that we aren't doing but we could still do within our parameters? So again, listening, learning from the community about what they're missing in order to then put something up. But we've got to remain apolitical. We can't be involved in politics of whatever the government of colour is. Even locally, we have Liberal Democrats, we have Labour, we have a Reform mayor, we have Conservative MPs. There's a whole mix of things that go on, but we also know they all present opportunities as well because of what's going on in their local area. So again, we've got to have an understanding of that and how we can then extract money to help the people that, quite frankly, sometimes could not care less about politics. Because actually that's not the most important thing to them. But we are able to, and me and Vikki recently had a meeting with one of the local MPs who has got a pot of money that we could connect into to deliver our services for one of the most deprived areas in East Yorkshire. But if we were political and didn't want to associate ourselves with that party, then we would be letting the residents down. So again, it's that understanding that you sometimes have to connect with people that you might not necessarily connect with in your personal life. But our charity needs to be able to serve everybody. So therefore, enabling and educating our team that where do you find the common ground to then get some really good outcomes.
And I think that's such a profound message in terms of the collaboration you're talking about. So I can see the type of institution you work with. And again, that clearly sums up your approach as well. NHS partners, your councils, you've got community groups. And again, as we say, it takes a village to do something like this. So why do you think Hull KR Foundation is so successful? And I measure success in a very different way. Like you mentioned, trying to understand the fabric of the society, trying to figure out what their issues are. So in your case, this is something which other institutions can learn. And I want this loud and clear in terms of how a partnership like this is effective in a city like Hull.
Well, I think first and foremost, you can't ignore the rugby league element to it. The fact that Hull as a city is quite unique sporting wise because the rugby is bigger than football. So if you think of all the other big cities, all major cities across the country, football will outrank the majority of other sports, whereas we're really unique in that side. So it's not to say Hull City, aren't popular, but actually when you've got two professional rugby league clubs in the city, you dwarf other sports, which so therefore for us as a charity it enables us to place us a bit higher than probably other charities, because again it gives us a national presence to be able to to get messages across. But what I fundamentally believe is about the people that work within the organization. So having the right people that can connect with people means we will get outcomes. And because we have people that are resilient, they're patient, they are local as well. I mean, I'm not from Hull, as most people tell me with my accent, but it's about understanding the people that you are serving, and so again, having that Hull culture as part of what we do is really important. So people coming in from the outside, if you come to work for the foundation, it's understanding why we have that culture, understanding why people behave the way they behave is important internally for us because it helps us externally. So getting the right people is important because we can grow the skills. People can go on training courses, people can learn, but actually understanding the area is really key. So Hull isn't a place naturally.
Yeah.
People don't pass through Hull. When you go on the train, the end of the line is Hull. So you are deliberately coming to Hull. So obviously the university's grown over the last few years. Obviously it's attracted foreign students, and obviously there will be a percentage of them that remain. But again, how many of those are settling from university? So you have to want to come to Hull, which I think then says a lot about the person, because you have then got to embed yourself in the culture, in their ways of doing things, which, depending on what part of the country you're from, might feel quite alien. But actually, what you learn is fundamentally that they are a great bunch of people, but what they do is they look after each other really, really well, because they know, and the generational kind of who's helping us, you do build that mentality. So again, having the same mentality in the team culture really helps then actually elevate the foundation. So as I said earlier, the badge opens the door, but it's the team that will keep people walking through it. So for me, we have to be able to, through all of our recruitment, all of our development, and even though we have challenges with funding to try and keep good people, that is really important to think, how are they going to fit into the team, and will they understand who we're working with?
Thank you for that. And that vision stays all along, isn't it, Paul? And that is why you've grown into what you have. And that transformation, again, the seeds of transformation is all across through your program. So again, one of the reasons why I really wanted both you and Vikki to be here is because Hull KR as an institution, yes, you're delivering programs, but it's all about that transformation. And in many ways, it aligns to what my area of research is in terms of trying to understand, identify, mobilize. But let me ask you this. Given what you do and how you do, and you talked about the collaboration partnership with whoever you can to make sure things keep on ticking, the role of public services, extremely important. And when you have when you think about, or when you hear about those cuts, when you hear about those issues in terms of the funding, which is a problem, where do you draw your strength from? Because that's what keeps things going, isn't it? So do you look inwards, the body, the brand, the establishment you have, or what do you do?
I think this will be a good opportunity as well to bring Vikki in on this question as well, because she's also dealing with the front line, as well. As obviously one of my major roles is how the charity runs, so the business behind the business, essentially. But so yeah, when you hear of cuts, when suddenly a program's no longer funded, you've got two things really. You've got potentially risk of the team, losing members of the team, alongside obviously then less support in the community for for the community, individuals, and we're not, it's not unique to us. All sort of VCSE organisations are like that. But what I have, and I'm not going to speak for Vikki on this, what I have is an everlasting, it will be okay. We will get through it. And as much as that gets tested at times, as you can imagine, that you're kind of sitting there thinking, why have they stopped doing this? What was so wrong about doing this? Or suddenly something goes back in-house, back into the council. You sort of like this stop-start approach. So you have to find people with a high level of resilience that can take the left hook here, the uppercut there, the kind of, where did that come from? That's like hit you on the back of the head. You shouldn't get used to these things, but you have an awareness of them. But we have, because I'll be honest, money is not the motivating factor to work in charity. If you're motivated by money, you're in the wrong sector. So you have this massive heart that then goes, something will arrive. And Vikki will tell you, because she's again been around it for a number of years. Sometimes it arrives at the 11th hour. Lots of stress has happened, lots of worry, because we're all human beings as well. We've all got bills to pay. We've all got to ensure we can live, to do what we are passionate about. But I think I just have this sense of it will be okay. But it doesn't mean then we rest on our laurels and it's gonna happen. We still put the work into and grind through, but also I have confidence. And as much as I might say to Vikki, I'm really frustrated by this, she'll send that frustration straight back because she's feeling the same thing. So we're in that boat together, kind of thinking, what's the solution? But I'll let Vikki tell you from her perspective, obviously, kind of how does she get through that world as well?
As you've sort of quite rightly commented, you've got to have a lot of resilience and a lot of it will be okay on the day. However, we're constantly planning. So because the contracts that I've been working on and the funding constraints, I've literally been 12 months. So I have to look not just at the 12 months ahead, but the 2-3 years ahead. Because I know that my funding will end in March. But I haven't sat there and I'm not sat there thinking, right, February, right, March, my funding's running out. What am I going to do? I've been planning for this from last February, because I know it's only 12 months. Hence why we've always been looking at what else we can do, where else can we fit, where can we pull funding from, who can I connect with. But this is not only about me, it's not only about my member of staff, it's also about the members of the community that I'm helping. Because as my funding ends in March, I'm not saying we can't help those people, because we will still continue to help those people with the organisation that we are. However, there may be a time that we might not be able to do that because, we've got no staff to do it. We are in exactly the same situation again. And I am quite confident, quietly confident that something will come up, and I'm betting it will be at the 11th hour again. So yeah, but as I said, we just get through it. We have to. It's a lot of support. So my member of staff, Paul, supports me fully, and I think the rest of the team as well. They all know that I'm probably one of the most precarious with employability, even though it's like so much needed, and the government and everybody is like, we need to get Britain working, we need to do this. Well, we can't do that if we haven't got anything, we haven't got any funding, and
Yeah.
we're not putting it out there. So for us, yeah, it's definitely resilience. It's the support, and it's about leaning on each other for support as well. We all have those bad days. We all have those really, really good days where, but on the bad days, that our team is there, which you can just go, I'm really frustrated. I just I need a vent. And then you bounce back, and as I say, resilience all the way.
I cannot agree more. Look, I'm very lucky to have you both here at different levels and different kind of work you both do. And certainly knowing you, Vikki, I see you how you make connections. And again, it's about those human connections, meeting people, talking to them, talking passionately about the projects which you have. So I know you guys have achieved quite a bit, and it is making a difference within Hull. People I've spoken to, and certainly your programs are brilliant and wonderful, touching the landscape of education. Of course, we're talking about youth employment and so many of them. But tell us about your plans in terms of the next 5 years. Where does Hull, what dent does Hull Care Foundation want to make over the next 5 years? Have you got anything sort of concrete looking at? We need to tick this off. We need to make sure we've addressed this, or we've gone in here, or we've looked at this.
Yeah, we're literally just writing our next 5-year strategy. So it's been kind of on my agenda for the past 6 months. Mainly to, again, just embed that identity. So again, we know where our place will be over those next 5 years, and having conversations, whether it's changes in the NHS locally, whether it's changes in the the jobs world, so employment, to kind of give some aspirations. And I think what is really difficult for us is to give those absolute concretes, because the landscape could change instantly. So then we have to kind of almost recalibrate to where we were sort of heading. So for us, the broader ambitions are working with more people, which will then include growing the geography of where we work. So majority of our work is within the city of Hull at the moment. But we are having discussions about East Riding, East Yorkshire, and there are areas of deprivation that need support, similar to the east of Hull. How many, our ability to grow, and that doesn't necessarily mean number of sessions. That would just be engaging with more people in what we already do. Because again, the challenge is, you grow too much, it's unsustainable. And so for us, one of our ambitions is we've got to make sure we're sustainable and we're still here in the next 5 years with the challenges that are facing, the VCSE sector, and the fights that you face for grant funding, and the ever reducing pots that is coming out of local authority. We have to justify every penny we spend, even though the VCSE sector is a much better value for money than the public sector. So our broader ambitions is to help more people, grow into more areas, and just remain relevant as an organisation, which is then that constant keeping to our identity, connecting with the right people, and being part of the right conversations. And we've got to do all of that without the guarantee of funding. So year on year, we don't start with a magic pot of with a pot of money. Then we go, we just need to spend this. We have to grow that year on year. So if we want to work with more people, we've got to find ways of generating more income. So again, one of our other ambitions is, how do we grow our awareness so that we increase donation? We look at fundraising in a different way to, again, be more resilient to any shocks that might happen in the country. Yeah. Not that I ever think we'll be back to a COVID situation, but at the same time, anything suddenly just knocks what's going on. The cost of living hits us all. We were hit by the national insurance hike from an employer's point of view. So again, suddenly adding that percentage on means Where do I find that in existing budgets where our grants don't take that into consideration? So growing awareness is a huge ambition for us as well, so that more people connect. So more people might donate. More people might donate time, resources, which keeps our overheads down as an organisation. Which means then the cash that you do have, we can then spend on. There's more of our cash being spent on the front line, because other things are being taken care of behind the scenes. So it's an ever-increasing challenge where we'll launch a strategy, but in 3 years' time, it might look fundamentally different because we can't predict the future, even though we kind of see trends.
Yeah.
A trend isn't a guarantee of funding. And when we want to work in the preventative world so that we don't get into the situation where we've now got to react and it costs more, nobody wants to fund preventative. So we can have all these amazing ambitions, all of this amazing outlook, but we have to be pragmatic in what we can then actually achieve as a charity. So this is the understanding, and sometimes the lack of understanding by people in the public sector of the challenges you're facing in order to be to exist, and to be a positive influence on people's lives. So I want the charity to absolutely outlive me, like all charities. But one thing in life, especially in charities, that is no way near a guarantee. And there will be charities folding every week because of those ever increasing costs. And a nice strategy doesn't pay the bills. So having those broad ambitions, and then pivoting to how the community need, hopefully is a good mix to be able to still be here in 5 years' time.
Paul, there's so much we can learn about. I mean, again, the way you spoke about the growth and the sustainability in terms of, I wish you could come over to this part of the world, the corporate world, and speak about some of these things, because it makes so much sense and it's so useful in terms of just understanding the approach you have towards growth, and again, towards making sure you are providing those services day in, day out. Because again, you mentioned about what people don't understand. But if you look at the health inequalities, which cost NHS millions of pounds every year, in terms of the referrals, but the work you do, in terms of how it stops, how it sort of supports those essential services in a completely different way. So let me ask you this again. I don't want to put you in a spot here, but if resources are allowed, if you're given a pot of money, there's a particular program here in how you'd want to scale dramatically or take it to the next level. Again, I know you may have your favorites, but let people know about it, where this would actually help.
What would I want to scale? I think being able to give people choice, because we go through so many peaks and troughs as to kind of what's needed. And as I said earlier, two people on the same street could be looking for the same outcome, but it's a different journey. So what do we fund that then makes this pot of money go a lot further as well, and get the greatest impact? We could fund Vikki's World and supporting people in how do you get them then to be contributing to the economy, through taxes and those sorts of things. We could fund our older people project, which if we can keep them out of GPs and A&E, means that primary care has more money because the community sector is creating social opportunities for people. Then we would save money and contribute money in different ways. And that's a really difficult question to answer, because I think for me, one of the things that I would love to do, and this is a personal aspiration, not necessarily a foundation aspiration, is to create a place where it doesn't matter what your challenge is, it's there for you to come along and there is a service for you. So it's almost like a hub where we create social opportunities for people to come and grow. So it doesn't matter what age you are, it doesn't matter what you're trying to achieve. It links back for me. It sounds really simplistic, but it's what gets us, the starting point is come and have a cup of tea, come and have a coffee, come and have a chat. And then we can help you. And we may have we may have a service which we can connect you in, which is already in the community. But having a central place where people like Vikki and other members of the team are just there and accessible, because actually we have core funded Vikki's role.
Yeah. Okay.
Who runs our health and well-being, Liam, who runs our community. We're not reliant on bits of money from here, bits of money from there to make up people's role. For me, it's funding that core element of a team that can then connect people into either a service we have or a service somebody else has, so that they're always there, you know. And I think about people that phone the GP on a Monday morning because they're lonely. You know, well, actually, no, phone us and come along and have a chat, because actually how many people might make something up in order to get an appointment with the GP because they're lonely? And actually, how does a GP say no to that? It's very difficult for them to do that. Whereas come to us and we might have 10 people that would have originally done that on a Monday at 8 o'clock. But actually instead they've walked down to their local hub, and actually we've solved their loneliness problem because it was just that. So for me, it would be core funding our team for X number of years. That means we don't have to worry about finding money for those people that know what is needed for the community. And that's then, when we can't do that, we lose amazing people to the private or the public sector. So people that have that akin to the charity, the community, get lost. And this isn't any knock on any supermarket, but when a Lidl and an Aldi can pay you more an hour than a charity, that's going to turn your head.
Yeah.
Great people could be working in sectors that they're not passionate about, but it pays their bills and it allows them to progress. So how many great people are we as the VCSE sector missing out on because of this funding knife edge that we're always on? So yeah, for me, it's not one project, it's funding us as a core team to keep people like Vikki here and not having to worry that when she gets to January, February, March, you're thinking, where's the next pound coming from? To that. And so therefore the money then we do raise is adding more value to what we've already got. So if we do need to employ another person because of the demand, we've actually then got that core team there for as long as that funding goes, which is always going to be an end. But it means we can be more flexible and more agile.
You know what, Paul, that tells something about your leadership quality as well. Again, this is something which we could learn from that side, the corporate side, I'm sure you're going to get some great Christmas presents, by the way. But, that's wonderful. That's a vision. And again, that also tells me who you are as a leader of that particular foundation. But more importantly, Hull KR Foundation, which is not just about well-being. We are talking about the local economy. We are talking about the participation levels. And I can give you some numbers, because what you do, what Hull KR Foundation does, every £1 which is invested in physical activity, it returns £3 to £4 in social value in deprived areas. We're talking about youth engagement programs. It reduces antisocial behavior by up to 25% in similar UK regions. And again, regular participation in sport. is linked to a 12% increase in school attendance and attainment, which is what you guys do. So again, I'm very conscious of the time, but I need to ask you this. So, how do you actually bridge that gap in terms of increasing? Again, we can't be not talking about sports, but how do you bridge that gap in terms of sports participation in communities where inactivity, or rather I should say physical inactivity, is so deeply rooted? Again, you have communities which you come across. How do you use sports to sort of make sure that is overcome?
First and foremost, it's probably not using the word sport,
Mhm.
because sport itself can conjure up negative images for people. So if you think about those that were not sporty at school, last to be picked, doing PE lessons in miserable conditions, it not being very, not a place where you want to feel your best. So actually changing the language, about being active is really key, and not stigmatizing people, because they're not the people that are going to walk around necessarily in gym leggings, for example. What is physical activity? And I watched, actually, we're just doing a video for one of our programs, which is older people, but it's seated exercise, it's movement to music, it's dancing, it's getting people active, where it's okay. You are active. You're walking to school. You're picking your kids up. You're walking to school. You're not getting in the car. That's positive. But the minute we start to label it as sport, people go, I don't want to do that. I'm not a rugby player. I'm not this kind of player, this kind of person. And talking to the team, there's 10,000 people that come and watch the rugby team at a home game, but there's not 10,000 people that want to play rugby. So you need to, again, tap into what do they like, what do they enjoy. And so again, that could be gardening, that could be some form of physical activity. And I think actually it was Vikki that last year, when we made a connection with one of I think it was one of the refugee groups, we took in a rugby ball. They had no idea what a rugby ball was. It's like that's this funny shaped ball, essentially, because culturally rugby is not something for them. However, what is important is for that group to understand how important rugby is to Hull. So how do you break down the barriers? Again, a lack of education in terms of we just don't know what rugby is, but we also need to integrate, as part of rugby, as part of Hull's culture. So providing opportunities where people can take part, but in a non-stigmatized, non-judgmental way. And that could be the same for the LGBTQ community, in terms of feeling safe to take part in something, because actually what people don't want to feel is everybody watching them, because they might not be that good at the sport. And I think that's something we have to overcome, because our brand is a professional, the main brand is a professional sport. So people are going to go, I don't want to go there, I'll embarrass myself. So it's really important that we find activities that people connect with. And actually, as we grow, the percentage of sport we will deliver will probably reduce, because actually we need to be an organization that are more culturally aware. So whether you're linking into art, you're linking into music, you're linking into heritage, that's just as important to people. But encourage, well, have you walked here? Have you cycled here? How can you be encouraging people to be active and show that it's good for your health? And just anecdotally, in our older people's projects, obviously they're susceptible to falls. Susceptible to, if you do fall, you're at risk of breaking a bone. People are waiting for operations, knee replacements, hip replacements, all of that stuff. But anecdotally, when they've had their operation, they don't want to go to the NHS physio. They want to come back to our session because the value they're placing on it. And when they talk to their GP or their specialist is like, well, if you're not going to come to the physio, we still want you to move. And then that's what they do. They come to our session and move. So once people buy into physical activity in the right setting, at the right level, people will keep coming back, because actually it's about the environment that we create that gets people coming back. So keep going on about it. It's that social. If the social's good, you'll take part.
Bring people back in, yeah.
Do that. And even from my own experience, I've been a member of that many different gyms, but my motivation to do it is really low unless I'm with a group. If I do it with a group, I connect with it better. So you then understand that actually I'm going for the social. We're going to catch up. We're going to have, conversations, but we're going to work out at the same time. So finding that social interaction is really important.
And this is a great point on which we can close our session. So both of you, Vikki and Paul, thank you so much for this conversation. I can now come back from this a lot richer in terms of what I know about Hull Care Foundation, because you've shown clearly, you're not just a brand which plays rugby that way. It's all about community support. It is where you create that belonging, where, again, you disrupt that isolation. And again, you look for future of individuals which can be imagined. So thank you so much for filling that gap, especially at a time when public systems are shrinking, and the work which you do is actually filling that gap and holding that social fabric together. And to everyone listening, if this episode at all resonated with you, please share it and ask yourself, what would our cities look like if every institution took community this seriously? And up until next time, please keep questioning, keep building, and keep finding strength here in the Broken Bazaar.